Let's hear from Wolfie from Forest Fan TV. We were just on his channel as well, doing a preview. This game means a bit more to you than the average Forest fan, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, mate. And after our chat earlier, I'm still depressed. And I've had already messages from my brother looking forward to the game and your victory. And I just don't want to believe it's going to be that straightforward. I've been watching your stream so far. I get a lot of what you're saying. Hard to disagree with some of it. But I just hold on to the fact that Forest do Forest things. When you expect them to win, they get slapped by Fulham. When you expect them to lose, they pull a rabbit out. So that's all I've got. If you want me to come on with some logic and some objectivity onto why I think Forest can win, then yeah, I can give you some deluded things. But I am worried. Our form is horrific. 1 win in 12, as you guys have said. 4 in the last 5 lost. No wins in 6. Every stat is against us. It doesn't matter for this one. 2 wins, out of 28 away from home. Thank God we're at the City Ground, which was a fortress until the last 2 home games, which we've lost both now. So
Wolfie, you must have been predicting a lot of wins recently then.
Yeah, I always predict Forest to win. Whether I predicted us last season to beat Man City 5-2 and we lost 6-0. So don't ask me for predictions. Don't ever go with me on your bet slips.
In terms of something to cling on to, if I think of it right, you've against the bigger teams, to be fair, this season, you have given them all a game. You know, Arsenal, you narrowly lost that 2-1. You beat Chelsea at Old Trafford. You were 2-0 up. Sorry, you beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. You were 2-0 up at Old Trafford, losing that 3-2. You beat Villa 2-0. I don't know how you fared against City or Liverpool, but against
Liverpool's
the bigger teams,
the only one that put us to the sword. Liverpool beat us 3-0. Against Man City, they went 2-0 up, and then Morgan Gibbs-White got Rodri. What's his name?
Rodri sent off. That's
Rodri,
right, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, he got him sent off, and then it finished 2-0. And we did put a good account of ourselves in the second half. You're spot on what you're saying, mate. When it comes against the big teams, I personally secretly think Cooper prefers playing top 6, top 8 teams because he's the underdog, and it means he can go into what he's comfortable with, which is low block, negative, defensive football. When we played the likes of Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, etc., when the onus was on us to attack, that's where I feel Cooper was found wanting. We narrowly beat Sheffield United in the last minute, blew a 2-goal lead against Luton, drew with Burnley, and these are the things that worry me about the context of the season going forward. So yeah, normally I would feel more confident playing Spurs over playing a Luton or what have you. But it's just our run of form at the moment, and the pressure's building big time on Cooper.
Yeah, talk to me about Steve Cooper, because there is, a lot of talk about it at the moment, saying Cooper's on his last legs and everything like that. But, you cast your mind back to last season. He did seem to turn it around where he had a similar first half of the season. But where are you at with Steve Cooper at the moment?
For me personally, I'm in a minority. I think he's reached his limits. The majority of the fan base are behind him, but I just don't see progress, boys, from last season. I'm not expecting Forest to go and win the league. But what I am expecting to see is an identity by now. If you take Ange as the example, he's come in within 3 weeks. I could see his identity, his style of play, and that what he wanted to go after. We're now nearly 18 months into Forest back in the Premier League. I'm seeing nothing different in terms of progression, in terms of the style of play, and that for me is frustrating. What I don't like, though, is the uncertainty. I think whether you're Cooper in or Cooper out, it almost feels like at the moment he's got a rolling 1-match contract. And I don't feel you can have a cohesive dressing room or club based on that. So for me, even though I'm Cooper out, if the owner Marinakis was to come out and say, we're covering him till the end of the season, fine, I can make my peace with that. My own personal feelings mean nothing, but to see it like what would happen if we beat Spurs this Friday and then we go and lose to Bournemouth, to Newcastle and Manchester United? It's just so up and down. I personally feel he should have gone a couple of games ago, because we had winnable games against Everton, Fulham and Wolves. That's 9 points that we could have, I'm not saying we would have won them all, but we took 1 out of 9. And now we're coming into a tough period. But the majority of the fans are still behind him, even 5-0 against Fulham, and they're still singing his name in the crowd. But I just think when you look at it objectively, he's at his limit. The only reason to keep him in right now is sentimentality. Most of their arguments are, well, he got us up. He gets Nottingham. We love him. He loves us. This stuff, it's all sentimental for me. And I look at it more objectively.
Do you think the players are still behind him?
It's interesting, isn't it? It looked like he'd lost the dressing room after Fulham. And we saw wholesale changes for the Wolves game. We saw Cheick coming back in, Ryan Yates, a couple of others as well. The big summer signings, the Sangares, Dominguez, etc., they were all dropped to the bench. Because I don't think he's lost them, but I don't think he's yet gained the big names respect yet that we brought in from this summer. How do I know? They may have not even heard of Steve Cooper before the summer, you know? So I do, and that's with all due respect to him, but I do feel that, you know, we've upgraded our team, we're upgrading our stadium, we've upgraded a lot of things off the pitch. So upgrading a manager for me is the next progressive step. And my worry is that if we do what we did last year, where Marinakis gave Steve Cooper a new contract, and then come, I don't know, February, March time, if Forest are in trouble, my big issue with it is that manager pool of decent manager gets smaller and smaller until you're left with Big Sam. And I don't want to get it to that stage. You either have to progressively look forward and think this is the right time where there's still good managers available currently, or you just come out and flat out say, he's here till the end of the season if you're Marinakis for me.
For you, though, you know, you were on 4 losses in a row, and obviously that culminated in the 5-0 loss to Fulham. But you did get a draw in your last game against Wolves. Now, you mentioned there was wholesale changes in that game. Did it seem like a bit of a turning point, or was it just a bit more of the same and, you know, you just, you know, wasn't that impressive a performance even though you got a point?
It's us three could have laced up against Wolves and we would have looked better than Forest did against Fulham. So an improvement to the Fulham match. Yes, 100% there was an improvement in the desire, in the attitude of the players. But we are setting a very low benchmark to what we saw against Fulham. I felt the players on the pitch were more so playing for Cooper than the team that did against Fulham. But if I'm looking at it objectively, Wolves weren't great. They did struggle in that game. They couldn't break us down, and we had a couple of chances to win the game. But you know, it's just a case of where are your standards? Is my question to the Forest fan base. Really, are you happy with 17th this year, just avoiding relegation, or do you think Forest should be progressing to more of a mid-table team? Now, my opinion and their opinion, honestly, doesn't matter, because the only opinion that matters is Marinakis. And he's come out in plenty of interviews, either via him or via the players, saying he wants to be pushing to establish Forest as a top 10 team. Now, a lot of people say that's deluded, but who are we to argue with the guy that's put 200, 300 million into a club? It's not my money that's been spent, it's his. So our opinions technically are important, but don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because it's where Marinakis sees the club and the investment he's put in for me.
What happened with your club captain Joe Worrall, and I think there was another player who got what's it called, banished from the first team? That was after the Fulham game. Have they been reintroduced? Do you know what the situation with them and what happened there?
So at the moment, there's a lot of rumors about it. There's been a lot of social media rumors about Joe Worrall saying X, Y, and Z about Steve Cooper. Now, he, for me, has never been, and I'll talk bluntly with you guys, I've never seen him as Premier League quality, speaking specifically about Joe Worrall. What you tended to get with Joe Worrall was either a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 performance. I don't know if you remember back to the game last season against Spurs at your ground, where he did that suicidal slide in for a penalty, gave it away and what have you. That's a lot of what we see with Joe Worrall. So he is very frustrating, but he was the club captain. And there seems to be, and I'm only saying this off with no inside knowledge, that there is a falling out between him and Cooper. With Scott McKenna, it's slightly different. It's a contract issue where he's got 6 months left on his contract and the negotiations aren't going well. But that is part of the thing that made a lot of people think that if he's fallen out with Joe Worrall, who's his boy, he's an academy player as well coming through the ranks, then has he lost the dressing room? So a lot of that came out after Fulham, even though he was banished, if that's the right word to use, weeks before that. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
been out of the squad for a while, with that training with the under-23s, etc. But again, these are the stories you don't want to be hearing, because it just shows you the lack of cohesion potentially that's going on behind the scenes. And it's not the first couple of players that he's fallen out with before. You know, a lot of the players he falls out with end up at Olympiacos, or players that he doesn't rate, or there's talks of players that he hasn't signed that he just kind of turns his back on and sends to Olympiacos or out on loan, like John Joe Shelby, for example. Over the summer, he got shoved out. Emmanuel Dennis, seeing the Brazilian guy Scarpa, Richards. You could make a whole team for the players that haven't haven't quite gelled in. So yeah, back on the point of Joe Worrall. Yes, he is club captain, but he has been exiled out of the first team.
A lot of questions were asked in the summer when you got into the Premier League. The amount of players you signed, what was it, like 20 players or something crazy like that?
30.
30 players, or even worse. I
year.
mean, when we were questioning it at the time, saying, oh, it's too many players to bed in all at once. In hindsight now, do you think that was a good decision or a bad decision?
Either good or bad, it doesn't matter. The problem we had at that time was that half our squad were loan players, and their loans got released back to their parent clubs. And Premier League or Championship that year, we were going to have to invest. Now, obviously, with the Premier League comes the money, and a squad. I feel what they did was just bolster out a squad and try and put a squad together, and then put it on Cooper to piece the jigsaw into a shape. But we did. So was it the right approach? It's probably not. Well, it depends. We stayed up, so you could argue, yes, it was the right approach. What we were expecting, summer just gone, was a bit more, for it to be a bit more surgical, with specific players going in, more going out, because we're very bloated in terms of a squad. But again, we saw, I think, 13 or 14 players come in this summer. And if you look at the team that started against Wolves, only 3 players from the batch that came in this summer made that starting team. So it's beginning to feel to me, and it's just my opinion, that there's a lot of these players that came in from the summer that Cooper may not have had an input in on. Sangare, for example, who was our big money signing. Thanks again for the Jono money that sanctioned that one. And it just feels like Cooper wants to go to his tried and tested from last year. So yeah, it was a lot. It's, not been done before to that extreme amount. But if we weren't to have spent in the Premier League, everyone said we're here for, a journey for a year. So you can never win that argument, because look at Norwich. When they come up, they don't spend, they go straight back down. Everyone says, why didn't you spend? But when you do spend, you're told, why have you spent? So it's
there's a fine balance, though, isn't there? Fine balance.
Does Cooper, for you, does he hold responsibility for signings like Hudson-Odoi and Origi, who have been brought in to bolster your attack but haven't quite cut it, have they?
I would say yes on Hudson-Odoi, because he worked with him in the England setup back in the under-17s, I think it was. Origi, I don't know. What the players I do know that Cooper went for were the likes of Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood, Shelby, those type of players that he chased himself after. There's been a few that have come in that I don't think he's had any involvement with. I'd be surprised if he knew who Murillo was, the Brazilian centre-back, who's probably our best player this season. He's ridiculously good. I think, but either way, I would say it doesn't matter. Like, every team now has a director of football, a recruitment team, and everything like that. If you are a manager at the Premier League level, you should be able to look at your squad. Obviously, you do have an input in it, but these are the players you're given. Deal with it. I know it sounds blunt, but just deal with it. These are the players you've got. Get a tune out of them, and do the business on the pitch.
Yeah, sometimes easier said than done, though.
Absolutely.
Look, let's talk about Brennan Johnson. You're saying before, thanks for the Brennan Johnson money. We spoke as well when Brennan did sign for Spurs, and you were saying to us how you thought it'd be a good signing for Spurs. Do you think it's worked out so far as you expected, or has it been a bit better or a bit worse?
I was surprised he's had as much game time as he has. I know he's kind of becoming more regular in the team now. Obviously, you've got your injuries and what have you. It was interesting to see that Ange put him on the left-hand side rather than the right-hand side in the majority of the games, which is something I wanted to see him in, because I feel it makes it easier for him to cut in and pop off a shot, because I still do think he's got great shots on him. However, a few of his crosses, which surprised me, that led to a few assists for you guys, were crosses from his left foot, which I've never fully rated his weaker foot. But seeing him, I think against Newcastle last week back on the right, he just looks more balanced there for me. Playing out on the wing, getting the ball in behind, running in, either taking a shot or looking to, you know, square it off for someone in there. So overall, I think he's exactly where I thought he would be. I have seen some, you know, development within him. I still think he's got plenty to grow still, especially at Spurs, especially playing at the higher end of the league. One thing I'm convinced is he'll never score a goal with his head. Now that I've said that, he'll do it tomorrow, but heading has never been his strong point. It's all about his feet and his pace for me. But yeah, it's an interesting one as well. I heard you guys mentioning it earlier on the stream about the reception he's going to get on the City ground. And our fan base is extremely sentimental. I've got a few mates who've said, should we put a banner up? Should we have a little viddy thing on the big screen beforehand? And I'm like, no, he's not a Forest player anymore. We can applaud his name, yeah, but leave it at that. Leave it at that. I don't understand why we've got to go over sentimental, you know, with it. So I expect him, though, joking aside, to get a really good reception tomorrow. But as far as I'm concerned, he's not a Forest player anymore. And, you know, he's for you guys to nurture and develop going forward. I just really hope he doesn't score.
How do you think he's going to deal with that, though? Like, because he does seem a bit of a reserved character, maybe coming a bit out of his shell now. But how do you think he's going to deal with the kind of passion of him going back to his old club?
He's always struck me as very humble and very rooted. He's always... like he's never been in the media or in the spotlight with any, you know, scandal stories or anything like that. He just comes across as a really well-grounded young lad, and a lot of that I think comes from his dad, David Johnson, who's obviously been through it and done it all before, and at Forest as well. So I expect him to warmly receive any applause he gets tomorrow. I don't expect any goal celebrations. Hopefully we don't get to find out. But look, there's no animosity from myself or any Forest fan on Brennan Johnson, because let's not forget, had we not sold him to you, there were certain players that we wouldn't have been able to afford, because it was all straight cash. 48 million. He was homegrown, so that all goes onto the bottom line on FFP, etc., through the academy. And I expect him to, you know, be very humble in his approach tomorrow. Could that impact him? We'll have to wait and see. But I do think he doesn't realize yet how good he can be, and maybe he does need a little arrogance about him to maybe push him on now that he's playing for Spurs, etc. Hopefully he cleans out Richarlison again, and, you know, they both get sent off. That will sort this out. But you know, I don't expect him to do the keepy uppies, that's for sure.
Well, given the form that you're in going into this game and how you've been, maybe how you set up in the last game, considering it was a big change, how do you expect the game to go on the weekend? If you saw how Spurs played against Newcastle, coming back into form after some bad results, but maybe you could argue Forest getting a point for the first time in 5 games as well. Do you expect, you know, Forest to be sitting back, soaking up pressure and just trying to see what they can do on the counter? Or do you maybe expect Forest to, being at home, take the game to Spurs a bit?
I think there's a few things that I know for sure are going to happen. Like I know the style Spurs are going to play. I could almost pick your 11 and be very close with it. Picking Forest 11 is impossible. You got more chance of winning the lottery at the moment. But that aside, you can pick how Forest are going to play. We are going to play low block. I am 99% sure Cooper will go with 5 at the back, with 3 in the middle. Try and block out that midfield, force you guys wide. And I think that's because that's his comfort zone. Try and hit you on the counter attack. Now, the big problem is Taiwo Awoniyi is out injured, probably till about February, March time, which leaves us very light up front. Chris Wood is not good enough. Origi hasn't been given a run, nor does he look good enough when he's come on. So you'll probably see Elanga playing as a false 9 with Morgan Gibbs-White in behind. But that won't change the game plan. The game plan will be to sucker you guys out of your half as much as possible, absorb, and then hit probably with the wingers. The likes of Nico Williams had a really good game against Wolves last weekend. And then looking for those balls over the top into Elanga. As good as Elanga can be, For me, his football IQ needs to improve. He's very good at running, getting himself into a good position, and then not finding the right pass. So he's quite tunnel visioned in his approach. So he's still very raw for me. So I'm not that hopeful that Elanga's going to bag a hat trick or anything silly like that. But he does create chances. And as long as he's looking around and aware of where the rest of the players are, we could hit you on the break, a bit like we did against Villa. But the big difference is, because a lot of the Forest fans are holding on to this, we beat Villa 2-0, similar style, etc. The huge difference is that Taiwo is not playing. And Taiwo really can rough up the defenders and has pace about him as well as power. So I think that will be the Forest style. I think that's almost guaranteed. The question is, can you break us down? Because what Forest have been good at, weirdly enough, is scoring in the first 15 minutes of most games. But even then, once we've scored, we don't go for the throat and try and get a second. Instead, Cooper drops even deeper and tries to hold out. So either way, we're probably screwed, boys, is what I'm saying.
So what's your score prediction then?
I hate this question against Spurs because I can't predict Spurs to win. My brother will.
Don't worry, just pretend like your brother's not watching.
He'll probably be. He'll find it somehow. Look, my heart says best Forest can hope for is a 1-1 draw. My head says you won't smash us because you will get frustrated. You'll probably win 2-0, 2-1. And I know you guys are saying 3-0, but for that to happen, you'd need to score early, and Forest would need to drop their heads heavily, because we won't. If you go 1-0 up, don't expect Forest to go to plan B and try and come out or anything like that. Forest will still hold on with maybe 10-15 minutes to go and then throw whoever's on the bench on. So that's why I don't expect it to be, a thrashing, a Fulham style 5-0. So I think 2-0 is probably my head score on this one. 1 in the first half, maybe 1 when we decide to come out with 15 minutes to go or so. But I hope I'm wrong.
Wolfie, always a pleasure speaking to you, my friend. Hopefully, maybe we can catch up after the game and have a bit of a debrief. But look, everyone do go and check out Forest Fan TV. Some great Nottingham Forest content out there. So, Wolfie, thank you so much for coming on.
It's an absolute pleasure as always to be on, boys, and hopefully my depression turns into happiness come tomorrow night.
A lot of people in the comments saying you look like Ange Postecoglou. They're calling you.
I get that
Ange.
a lot, I have got a quarter Greek in me, so I don't know. Maybe somewhere we're related down the old family tree somewhere. But yeah, I've had that quite a bit lately.
Someone's coined you Ange Forestecoglou. So
I like that. He was close to being the Forest manager last year, by the way. So you guys have got yourself a good one.
Gotta never happen. Nice.
Thanks, Wolfie. We'll speak to you soon, mate.
All the best, guys. Have a good stream.
And
Cheers,
cheers.